Hi there, welcome to the show. Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig are back home this morning. The two men were detained in China for more than 1,000 days. The Canadian government called for their release for years, but they were only freed after Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou reached a deal with U.S. authorities, and her extradition case was then in Canada was then dropped. The Foreign Affairs Minister is thanking Canada's international partners, who he says helped secure the release of Kovrig and Spavor. And Foreign Affairs Minister Marc Garneau is here this morning. Good morning to you, Minister.
Good morning, Rosemary.
So you greeted Michael Spavor, Michael Kovrig when they landed in Canada. You were there with the Prime Minister. What was that moment like? What did they say to you? What did you say to them?
It was a very memorable moment, one I'm going to remember my whole life. Of course, we've been working on trying to get the release of the two Michaels, but to see them actually land and to get off the airplane and to touch down on Canadian soil was very emotional. It was something that we had all been hoping for a very long time. And I think, you could sense a collective sigh of relief from Canada and joy at seeing our two Michaels finally back on Canadian soil. And it was really something that, as a politician, you don't think is the kind of thing that will happen in your life. But this was something to remember.
Yeah, I can well imagine. I want to talk a little bit more about how we got to that point. From what I understand, talks sort of ramped up or went to the sort of the next level over the past month. When were you told about the deferred prosecution agreement?
A couple of weeks ago, and that really was what opened the door to the return of the two Michaels. The fact that a deferred prosecution agreement proposal had been arrived at between the Department of Justice, which operates independently, and Huawei lawyers, and that Meng Wanzhou was ready to sign it, and that it seemed acceptable to the Department of Justice. That sort of unlocked the whole process, and things happened extremely rapidly after that.
Was the timing made after the election? Was that done in a purposeful way, from what you understand, Minister?
No, I think it's just worked out that way. The sooner we could get the two Michaels back, the better it was for all of us.
And if that had not happened, if that piece had not happened from the Justice Department and the Biden administration, would we have had this outcome? It just seems as though the other process, if it had just played out, was going to just last too long.
So I'm not going to predict how it would have happened if the DPA, the Deferred Prosecution Agreement, had not been agreed to by both parties. But we would have continued, of course, to press to get the release of the two Michaels. But fortunately, it happened the way we were hoping it would.
There are some reports in Chinese state media this morning, so I don't know how accurate they are, obviously, that said that the Michaels applied for bail, quote, because of illness, and the courts agreed, and that's the reason they were freed. What would be your response to that?
Well, I saw the two Michaels yesterday. They're in fine form. I can say that it was an emotional reunion. There were some tears. But you know what struck me? The two of them have maintained throughout this horrible ordeal of over 1,000 days. They still had their sense of humor. And that to me was such a strong indication that these are two extraordinary and resilient Canadians. And we're so happy for them.
Does that, though, report in state media? Because obviously we know that the Chinese regime uses state media to offer propaganda to its citizens. Does that indicate to you that China is looking to save face here?
I'm not going to predict why they would have made that statement, but I will agree with you that it is primarily for local consumption.
China has always denied, as you know, that this was hostage diplomacy, while your government obviously said that these arrests were linked. Meng Wanzhou gets on a flight back to China, and the two Michaels are released. What should that tell us about how China operates and how we need to deal with China?
Well, we've said from the beginning, these were totally manufactured charges. This was a totally arbitrary detention of two Canadian citizens in retaliation for the fact that we, as a country of the rule of law, were respecting our extradition treaty obligations with respect to the United States, and that we, as a rule of law country, we're also allowing complete access to the judicial courts by Meng Wanzhou, who was allowed to defend herself. We've been consistent from the beginning. We're a principled country, a country with values. We stuck to them. And it's very clear, as many commentators pointed out yesterday, that the immediate return of the two Michaels linked that to the Meng Wanzhou case in a very direct manner.
Yeah. Does this, though, Minister, not show that it works, that diplomatic hostage-taking works, and that China can act like a bully and there are few repercussions?
I think China realizes, particularly with respect to the growing international community's condemnation of arbitrary detention, their support for the declaration of arbitrary detention in state-to-state relations, which has now got 65 countries, and there's growing momentum there, that arbitrary detention is an unacceptable practice. In the case of our two Michaels, we're very, very glad to have them back, but there are still people being arbitrarily detained, and we hope that this unacceptable practice is going to come to an end. It's fine for countries to have disagreements, but you cannot resort to arbitrarily putting citizens of another country in jail because you're not happy with that country.
How does Canada now plan to rebuild its relationship with China? There are people who say that it will be impossible to rebuild, that trust has been completely broken. So what will your government's approach be?
Well, let me say our eyes are wide open. We've been saying that for some time. There was no path to a relation with China as long as the two Michaels were being detained. But, you know, as we've also said, it's a complex relationship. China has changed in the past 5 years. Everybody recognizes that. So our approach is fourfold. We coexist with them because we're on the same planet. We compete with them. That includes competing with respect to trade. We will cooperate with them in certain areas. For example, climate change. That's something that affects the entire planet. We've got the COP26 conference coming up in November. We must cooperate in certain areas, and we will challenge. We challenged China with respect to arbitrary detention of the two Michaels. We challenge China with respect to their treatment of the Uyghurs, Tibetans, the people of Hong Kong, and we will continue to challenge them. That is the basis for our relationship with China.
Canada, however, is not part of AUKUS, as you know. There's a security pact that was set up to deal with China, which includes the US, the UK, and Australia. That seems problematic to me. Is there anything that we can do to change that? Are we going to be included in any way?
This is not problematic. This was based on a decision between Australia, the United States, and the UK that Australia would acquire nuclear submarines. It has no bearing whatsoever on our security and defense partnerships with respect to NORAD, with respect to NATO, with respect to the Five Eyes. Those relationships for security and defense are very solid and will continue to be solid.
Sure. But what does our exclusion say about how our allies see us?
We are not in the market looking to acquire nuclear submarines in Canada. It's as simple as that.
Yes, but it is also, that may well be, but it is also a pact that is supposed to deal with China's growing dominance in the world. And that's the part that I would think we would want to be part of, no?
And Canada has developed an Indo-Pacific strategy. And as I say, we are strong partners with the United States with respect to the Five Eyes. And we are looking after Canada's national security and defense interests, and we will continue to do so.
Couple more questions, if I can, Minister. On Huawei, we had, of course, been waiting for a decision from the government about allowing Huawei into our 5G network. Other Five Eyes nations have banned Huawei. I imagine that decision was put on ice because of the situation with the two Michaels. Should we expect a decision on that soon?
So Canada will make its decision with respect to Huawei 5G, and it will be based, as we've always said, on ensuring the security of our telecommunications network.
But that decision can actually happen now? Would that be fair to say because of this development?
Well, when we have, as a reappointed government, made that decision, we'll make it public.
The two Michaels obviously have endured, an enormous amount of struggle, but their livelihoods also had to be put on pause for, almost 3 years. Is the government of Canada considering any kind of compensation for either of the men?
So we've been there for them from a consular point of view. We are there with them now with respect to their needs, and we're very sensitive to that.
What does that mean, Minister?
Well, we're very sensitive to the fact that they've gone through an extraordinary ordeal in the past 1,019 days, and that if there is any need for us to be there to support them, we will be there to support them.
What would you say to Canadians about their safety in China? Should they be concerned if they are going to China for a visit or to see someone or for business purposes? Is it a safe place?
So this allows me to tell Canadians, and I hope that they're listening, that we always put out what are called travel advisories on the Global Affairs Canada website. So we strongly recommend that any Canadian who's going to visit China or any other country for that matter consults the Global Affairs Canada travel advisory before they make that decision, which is ultimately a personal decision, but that they should take the advice that is provided by the Government of Canada. And I believe that all people after these 1,019 days who are thinking of going to China are certainly aware of the ordeal of the two Michaels who were arbitrarily detained.
I'll just end on this, Minister. Are you surprised at the speed at which this unfolded once it started moving in the right direction?
I think Canadians were very surprised. We have been working this in the background for a very long time, and I'm so pleased for the two Michaels and for their families, whom I've been in touch with on a monthly basis for many, many months, and I can't tell you how relieved they are, as well as are all Canadians.
Yeah, I would agree on that point, Minister. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.